Hey kiddos, welcome back for story time. We are still reading Dr. Proctor's Fart Powder by Joe Nesbo. We are on chapter 4. The New Boy and Mrs. Strobe's Class. The birds were chirping and the sun was shining outside the classroom, but inside it was dead quiet. Mrs. Strobe nudged her glasses down her unbelievably long nose and peered at the new boy. "So you're Nilly then," she said in a slow, raspy voice. "Ooh, turn too many pages." "Yep, what of it?" Nilly responded. A few people laughed, but when Mrs. Strobe did her signature move, slapping her hand against her desk, it got dead quiet again in an instant. "Could you please stand up straight, Nilly?" her voice rasped. "I can hardly see you sitting there behind your desk." "I'm sorry, Mrs. Strobe," Nilly said, "but I am sitting up straight. The problem, as you can see, is that I'm tiny." Now the other students were laughing even louder. "Silence!" Mrs. Strobe fumed. She nudged her glasses even farther down her nose, which she could safely do because there was still plenty of nose left to go. "Since you're new, why don't you please tell us a little bit about yourself, Mr. Nilly?" Nilly looked around. "New?" he said. "I'm not new. If you ask me, you guys are the ones that's new. Apart from Lisa, that is. I've met her already." Everyone turned around to look at Lisa, who mostly wanted to sink down into the floor. "Besides, I'm 10 years old," Nilly said. "So, for example, if I wore a pair of shoes, I wouldn't be new at all. I'd be extremely old. My grandfather had a dog who got sent to the old age home when she was 10. Mrs. Strobe didn't make any attempt to stop the snide laughter that followed, but just looked at Nilly thoughtfully until the laughter subsided. "Enough clowning around, Mr. Nilly," she said, a thin smile spreading over her thin lips. "Considering your modest size, I suggest that you stand on your desk while you address the class." To Mrs. Strobe's surprise, Nilly didn't wait to be asked twice, but leaped up onto his desk and hoisted his pants up by his suspenders. "I live on Cannon Avenue, with my sister and my mother. We've lived in every county in Norway, plus a couple that aren't in Norway anymore. By which I mean they were in Norway during the Ice Age, but once the ice started melting, big pieces broke off and drifted away into the ocean. One of the biggest pieces is called America now, and over there they have no idea that they're living on a chunk of ice that used to be a part of Norway." "Mr. Nilly," Mrs. Strobe interrupted, "stick to the most important details, please." "Most important," Nilly said, "is playing the trumpet in the Norwegian Independence Day parade on May 17th, because playing the trumpet is like kissing a woman. Can anyone tell me where I can find the nearest marching band?" But everyone in the classroom just stared at him with their mouths hanging open. We'll take a stop. Look at Nilly standing on his desk. "Oh yeah, I almost forgot," Nilly said. "I was there this morning when one of the world's greatest inventions was invented. The inventor's name is Dr. Proctor, and I was selected to be his assistant. We're calling the invention Dr. Proctor's fart—" "Enough!" shouted Mrs. Strobe. "You can take your seat, Mr. Nilly." Mrs. Strobe spent the rest of the class explaining the history of Norwegian Independence Day, but none of the children in the classroom were listening. They were just staring at the little bit of Nilly they could see sticking up over his desk. Then the bell rang. At recess, Nilly stood by himself watching the other children play tag and hopscotch. He noticed Lisa, who was also standing there watching. Nilly was just about to go over to her when two large boys with crew cuts and barrel-shaped heads suddenly stepped in front of him, blocking his way. Nilly already had an idea of what was coming next. "Hello, Pipsqueak," one of them said. "Hello, oh giants who wander the earth with heavy footsteps, blocking out the sun," Nilly said without looking up. "Huh?" the boy said. "Nothing, Pipples," Nilly said. "You're new," the other boy said. "So what?" Nilly asked quietly, even though he already knew more or less what the answer to the "so what" question would be. New means we dunk you in the drinking fountain, the other boy said. Why? Millie asked. Even more quietly, he knew the answer to that too. The first boy shrugged. Because, he started, trying to think of the reason, and then all three of them, the two boys and Nilly, that is, all exclaimed in unison, because that's just the way it is. The two boys looked around, obviously checking if any of the teachers were nearby. Then the bigger of the two boys grabbed Nilly's collar and lifted him up. The other one took hold of Nilly's legs, and then they carried him off toward the drinking fountain in the middle of the playground. Nilly hung there like a limp sack of flour between those two, studying a little white cloud that looked like an overfed rhinoceros up in the breathtakingly blue sky. He could hear how it got quiet around him as children joined the procession, mumbling quietly in anticipation. He watched them fight for a chance to plug the openings of the other fountains with their fingers so that only one powerful stream of water was left, shooting almost 10 feet into the air. Nilly felt himself being lifted up and could feel the cold gust of air next to the stream of water. People started cheering. We christen you, said the guy holding Nilly's legs. Flamehead the pygmy, the other said. Nice one, dude, the first one yelled. Guess we'd better put out his flame. The boys laughed so hard it made Nilly shake up and down. Then they held him over the fountain of the water, which shot Nilly right in the face, hitting his nose and mouth. He couldn't breathe, and for a second he thought he was going to drown, but then the hands lifted him up out of the stream. Nilly looked around at all the children near the drinking fountains and at Lisa, who was still standing by herself at the edge of the playground. More, more, the kids yelled. Nilly sighed and took a deep breath. Then they dunked him down into the water again. Nilly didn't put up any opposition and didn't say a word. He just closed his eyes and mouth. He tried to imagine he was sitting in the front of his grandfather's motorboat with his head hanging out over the side, so the sea spray hit him in the face. Nice. When the boys were done, they set Nilly down again, and went on their way. Nilly's wet red hair stuck to his head and his shoes squished. The other kids crowded around and watched, laughing at him, while Nilly pulled his t-shirt up from between the suspenders. Weak drinking fountains you guys have here, he said loudly. It got quiet all around him. Nilly dried his face. At Trafalgar Square in London, they have a drinking fountain that shoots 30 feet straight up, he said. A friend of mine tried to drink from it. The water knocked out 2 molars, and he swallowed his own braces. We saw an Italian guy get his wig knocked off when he went to take a drink. Nilly paused dramatically as he wrung out his wet t-shirt. True, some people said it wasn't a wig, but that it was the Italian guy's own hair that had been pulled right out. I decided to try sitting on the fountain. Nilly leaned to the side to get the water out of his ear. There they are, dunking Nilly in the water fountain. That's so mean. Finally, one of the kids asked, "What happened?" Well, Nilly said, holding his nose and blowing hard, first through one nostril and then the other. What did he say? One of the kids who was standing farther back asked. The ones who were standing in front said, shh. From up where I was sitting, I could see all the way to France, which was more than 500 miles away, Nilly said, shaking his bangs and sending out a spray of water. That may sound like an exaggeration, he said, pulling a comb out of his back pocket and running it through his hair. But you have to remember that it was an unusually clear day, and that part of Europe is extremely flat. Then, Nilly plowed his way through the crowd of kids and walked over to Lisa at the edge of the playground. Well, she said with a little smile, what do you think of our school so far? Not so bad, he said. No one's called me Silly Nilly yet. Those two are Trolls and Trim, Lisa said. They're twins, and unfortunately, they live on Cannon Avenue. Nilly shrugged. Trolls and Trim live everywhere. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Every street has Trollses and Trims. You can't get away from them, no matter where you move, Nilly explained. Lisa thought about it. Could there be Trollses and Trims in Sarpsborg too? Did you find a new best friend yet? Millie asked. Lisa shook her head. They stood there next to each other in silence, watching the other kids play, until Lisa asked, "Was that really true, what you said about Dr. Proctor and the invention?" "Of course," Millie said with a wry smile. "Almost everything I say is true." Right then, the bell rang. And that is where we're going to stop for today with our little book. How fun! All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you tomorrow for some more story time.